for anyone who's new, plus the instructions, and maybe some more people will come in.
Sure, I'll get started. I'm going to share my screen here, guys. Okay, so welcome everybody to our second Q&A session for the Maricopa Highway Demonstration Project. This meeting is different than our Community Advisory Committee meetings in that it's more broadly open to the public and anybody who wants to just ask questions or discuss the project. It's not really for folks who want to be involved with the day-to-day decision-making or implementation of the project. And so it casts a wider net in terms of our outreach efforts. And today's Q&A session is going to be focused primarily on the design of the demonstration project. That is, what are the materials that we're using? How does the project align with the longer-term ATP lane reduction project? And also just more updates for all of you about our next steps and where we are in the overall process. I'm gonna go on here. Our team is made up of, for those of you who don't know, we are urban planners based out of Miami and New York. And then we're also joined by JP Marketing, which is a marketing firm. They're based in Sacramento. Two Design Group is an engineering firm that's in Los Angeles. Prism Creative Group is an event production company, and they're in Miami. And Numina is a technology firm that is going to help us collect data. So just one quick note here. Dana, I'm getting a note here from Paul Crabtree, and he says that he's having trouble logging in, just so that if you can try to troubleshoot that with him, other people might be having that same issue. And then just general notes about, housekeeping here. Keep yourself muted if you've got background noise, so we don't hear echoes and all that. If you do have a question, use the chat function. If it relates to something that we're talking about actively, we'll try to get to it. I don't have a problem interrupting our presentation, or Dana can interrupt me and I'll interrupt her to ask a question that's germane to whatever it is that we're saying. If it's just generally about the project, we'll wait until the end and do all question and answer at the end. And also, there's that raise hand function. So if you do have something to say, raise your hand. We'll be able to see it, and we'll call on you if it's the appropriate time of the presentation. And also keep in mind the video is being recorded. So if you do not want your face to be recorded, if you don't want your COVID beard to be on video, shut off the video, or send us your emails with questions. So today we're going to go into just a broad overview of the project. Most of you already know because you've been in one of our previous meetings about the project. We'll go into where we are in the process of planning and implementing this demonstration project. And then Dana will jump in to discuss the site plan block by block and discuss any relevant points for each of those blocks. We'll discuss also very briefly our evaluation plan and how we're going to monitor the project and also make changes throughout if there is a need to do that. I think that's a big concern and a big question that everybody's had about the demonstration itself. And then we can have an open, question and answer about the project, and any questions. We'll answer anything that comes up. So just a broad overview for those of you who don't know. This is a 6-month temporary demonstration of a proposed longer-term construction project that the city of Ojai is undertaking for Maricopa Highway between El Roblar and Cuyama Rd and the Y, or Ojai Avenue. And it's a lane reallocation. So going from 4 lanes, 2 lanes in either direction, to 1 lane in either direction, and then the extra space is being given over to on-street parking, protected bike lanes, and street trees. And then there are also improvements to the entrance to Nordhoff High School, to accommodate for drop-off and pickup at key times, and curb extensions that are going to shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians at all of the intersections along the whole corridor. So our timeline for the demonstration and the purpose of the demonstration is to try to show the community what this project might look like using short-term, low-cost materials. And this is also a way for us to field test and prototype what that design might look like, so that we can iron out any kinks in that design before it actually goes into final construction. So our timeline is to build the project this summer, either at end of July, beginning of August, depending on when we get our permit approvals. And then the longer term ATP project is due to be approved in October and will be under construction in next summer. So there is plenty of time to incorporate any learnings from this project into that longer term effort. So in terms of our process and how we work on these projects, the first thing that we do is we set up community outreach committees and really start meeting with folks. We did that in March and in April. Really, we started at the end of February. And we create all the mechanisms that people can engage to reach us and to actually find out about the project. All of that is on the website, the project website, which is on the City of Ojai's website. And there you'll find frequently asked questions. You'll find all of our previous outreach efforts are recorded and on the website, so that from our point of view, we're trying to be completely transparent with folks about what we're doing and try to incorporate all of the comments that we've gotten so far. We produce a draft site plan that goes through several different rounds of review with our technical committee and our community advisory committee. The technical committee is made up of folks from the police, the fire department, the water district, the sewer district, and they give us feedback about the technical functioning of the street. And then the community advisory committee, which many of you have been involved with so far, is really about understanding how people use the street and what the community's perceptions and intuitions are about the street. So we continue that through April and May. We're in the May-June column and permit acquisition. We're in the process of finalizing the permit documents and the application. We hope to submit that by Friday and begin the approval process, the formal approval process with Caltrans. We're also going to start collecting our before data, which is a baseline for any sort of analysis that we're going to be doing. For the purposes of this project, because of COVID and the impact to the school and our driving patterns in general, we're using some data that was collected last summer, which is still relevant in terms of our professional opinion. 1 year's worth of difference in terms of the data is not going to mean that we can't use that information. And then the devices that we're using, the Numina devices that Dana will talk about in a little while, are being deployed in a few weeks, and we're going to have that data. It's real-time information that we'll be able to access at any point during the project, and it's active for the entire 6 months. So apart from, or different from other public works projects where we do a spot count on a random day, these devices will allow us to understand and get data in real time over the course of this 6-month process. So we'll be able to monitor that and really understand the functioning of the project and make adjustments as needed based on actual data, not our own opinions or just public pushback if that occurs. And then finally, the step that we're going into next, once we have more clarity on when we're going to get our permit. So if Caltrans tells us next week, okay guys, your permit documents are all great, we've already reviewed these drawings and these permit forms, we expect to issue you the approval by the first week of July, then we will begin the procurement process for all of the materials that we're going to need. That's the paint, the delineators, the planters, and start to line up all of our vendors, our subcontractors who are going to do the work. We're already getting quotes for all of that work right now as we speak. But when we execute that, we want to be sure we're going to get the actual permit. So that's going to happen in the next few weeks, and we'll let everybody know when that actually happens. Finally, once we have the date set, we're going to be able to train our volunteers and actually go out and execute the demonstration project. And then that's when our evaluation plan starts. And the evaluation plan is going to involve both measuring data points like the number of people who are walking and biking, the speed of cars post demonstration project, and then there's also going to be this monitoring and inspection element on behalf of the city, where they go out, look at the materials, see how the street is functioning, see how traffic is flowing, where the locations that cars are queuing and potentially stacking into other lanes. One of the big elements of this project is, if you do the lane reduction, how are you going to impact traffic backing up at locations like Nordhoff High School or the entrance to the hospital? And so we've designed the project to be flexible enough to make changes during the demonstration to accommodate for any type of backup that we observe. And the city will be going out there weekly. At least for the first 2 weeks, they're going to be going out there every day or every other day. And then as the project progresses, they'll be going out there less and less. We will have banners posted up along the roadway on the Caltrans light poles that will have information for folks to contact us and to contact the city if they see something wrong, if there is a material failure for whatever reason, or if they see something that needs to be fixed. So there's going to be a way for people to actually get back to us to make a change if that is necessary. So I think that's a huge part of this project, is just letting people know that the demonstration is a test and it's a way for us to evaluate the project and the long-term design. So this is your opportunity to really think about how the project is working and let us know what you think, apart from our own ability to collect that data and the city's inspections on a daily or weekly basis. So I'm going to hand it over to Dana. She's going to walk you through some of the details about the data collection and also the actual plan that we're going to be implementing, and then we'll do our Q&A after that. So I'm going to stop my screen share and she's going to start it up on her end.
And I received feedback that for some reason the raise hand function isn't visible for some people. So I'm going to be keeping an eye. Well, I can't while I'm presenting. Tony, if you can keep an eye on the chat. And if you do have a comment or a question, make sure in the drop-down menu of the chat to just select, either everyone or either me or Tony to just let us know. And Tony, I did see a question in there. Can you just clarify the timeline as it relates to October again?
I don't see the question here. I don't see any history of
questions.
Hold
on, it was sent just to me. It was a question asking if you had said that the final Ojai City Council approval would be in October.
Actually, that's a question for Greg, when the Ojai approval will be. The October deadline related to Caltrans approval of the permit for the final design, not necessarily the council approval of the final design.
Right. Right now, with the COVID-related delays because of school not being in session, the demo pushes from July to December. The CTC is the granting authority, and they're looking at opportunities to delay funding as well. So it appears that we'll be able to push the permitting till December, possibly later. Mm-hmm. So at least we can have a full 6-month overlap and try to incorporate any lessons we learned from the demonstration into the design.
Great, thank you. Okay.
Okay, so this slide just starts out with a little bit more information about the sensors that Tony was talking about. We are installing 5 sensors at 4 different intersections. And so primarily the sensors are collecting count data. So cars, bikes, pedestrians, and trucks. So including buses and freight, so large vehicles. And the sensors are actually video. So we're also going to be able to, in addition to get count data, we will actually be able to look at things like car turning movements at intersections, and also, you know, how pedestrians are interacting with the intersections as well. So that will be great to have. And like Tony said, it's going to be ongoing. And that's an image of them. I think it's maybe just helpful for everyone so that you kind of know what they look like, so you're not surprised when we get those in. And then just a quick recap of the outreach. So we've had 3 community advisory committee meetings so far. This is our second public Q&A. After the first Q&A, we had 3 sets of office hours for people who could not make the time, which we'll plan to do again. And then we've had 2 technical advisory committee meetings, as well as other check-ins with Caltrans individually about the site plans. And so before project implementation, we have 2 more CAC meetings to go, 1 more public Q&A, another technical advisory committee, plus further office hours. So we are continuing to, you know, constantly evolve and expand our outreach. We have a number of different platforms going right now. We have the project webpage. We have an Instagram account, which is a social media account. We're placing ads in the Ojai Valley News. I've been sending personal emails. Some of you probably have received them. I'm sorry if it seems like it's too many, but we're doing our best to reach everyone virtually as much as we can. And as we get closer to the implementation, we'll potentially start using some other methods like radio and really reaching out to other networks to help us disseminate the information, because we want and need everybody to be aware that the project is happening and know that they are welcome to submit feedback. And on that note, we have produced both pre and post implementation surveys. So the pre-implementation survey is actually on the webpage. If you guys want to take it, the link will be at the very end of the presentation, and that's to help us get an idea right now of how people are using the corridor and kind of their initial perceptions about things like safety and where the challenging areas might be. And then the idea is to compare that to the survey after we implement the project to get that kind of qualitative and anecdotal feedback.
And I think there's an important note to be made here for everyone, and that's we're doing a demonstration, right? So the purpose of the demonstration is to understand how the project functions. So the question is, what exactly are we testing? What is the demonstration of? What are we trying to measure in this demonstration that would help inform the final design? And so when it comes to the surveys, they're focused primarily on your experience walking and biking, because the project is at its heart, it's a reallocation of roadway space from cars to people walking and biking. And so what we want to know is, to what extent is that design and that proposal improving the quality of that experience? Mm-hmm. Because if that's the nature of the project, we want to know how well it's working. So the qualitative experience is, do you feel safe? Do you feel safer now walking on the street or biking on the street? Do you feel more comfortable walking on the street or biking on the street now that there are fewer lanes and more bicycle and pedestrian space? And then on the other side, in terms of evaluation, you know, how are we impacting the number of crashes at key locations where there is an observed pattern of crashes in the previous 5 years? Or how are we observing a change in the speed of cars on the street as compared to previous years? So all of these are in service of the question, what is it that we're trying to measure, and how do we measure the success of the project? Mm-hmm. So I think that's important for people to understand. This is not just an exercise in, you know, let's just create a bike lane. We're trying to really understand what's working and what's not working so that we can make the final project better.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, so these are some highlights or overview points before we really dive into the design of the site plan. So the first couple points are just some reminders. So this is a demonstration project. So everything that we are implementing is within the existing right-of-way. So the permanent project might include some changes to curbing, some widening of sidewalks, you know, additions of ADA ramps, etc. But we are not making any changes to the existing curbing, and we're not pouring any new concrete. So everything that we're placing is using the existing striping and using materials that will, to the second point, be completely removed after the 6 months, unless otherwise approved by Caltrans. So that will be to be determined. So we have based the plans as much as we can off of the 60% design of the permanent project, because naturally we are trying to demonstrate the permanent project, but just due to the nature of the demonstration project, so the fact that we can't shift curbs and completely shift lanes if necessary, and because of the fact that this is a new approval process for Caltrans, we have had some very minor deviations from the 60% plans that we can point out in more detail. This is an important one. The combined bike lane and buffer is a minimum of 11 feet. So this will allow emergency vehicles to use the lane as an emergency vehicle access lane. And there will be planters, which we will show you, but any other delineators are low profile enough for emergency vehicles to mount and cross over and get into the bike lane if they need to go around traffic. Like Tony said, we have been producing the site plans with guidance from the Technical Advisory Committee. So that's both water districts, that's Ventura County Fire and Police. We've also had the community hospital review them as well. And then, like I said, 2 separate rounds of review with Caltrans. So we've really been developing the designs with them along the way. And then just high level about the design. What you're going to see is separated bike lanes between Ojai Avenue and El Roblar Cuyama, which includes a 1-lane reduction each way. And we actually have 2 types of kind of physical separation. So there is the buffer between the bike lane, but there's also planters and on-street parking and low profile delineators. So we're really kind of maximizing this idea of a low stress bicycle facility to try to encourage as many people as possible to feel safe using it. An overview of the materials that you'll see. So the delineator and the planters, that's pretty much exactly what they're going to look like. The planters will definitely be spaced further apart, as well as the delineators, which I'll call out on one of the next slides, but we're using a manufacturer that we've worked with before. We've used these low profile delineators before. They're very durable. Both the planters and the delineators are going to be bolted into the ground. Those white stripes that you see there are retroreflective. So at night, the barriers will be visible to cars. And then we'll also be using low profile plants as well, so as to not have any sight issues with the plants. We're going to be using a latex traffic marking paint. This is a Caltrans approved material. It is more durable. It's not necessarily, it's a durable paint. So we're going to have to, really remove it after the project. It's not something that's just going to fade away after time. And then other materials, we'll use stencils for the pavement markings. And then, like Tony mentioned, we're going to have both project signage and banners along the corridor to have some signage and bring attention to the project, but also to allow people using the corridor, no matter what mode they're using, to see ways to give us feedback.
And a note on those delineators, we're still getting final approval from Caltrans because they are not on their approved list of traffic control devices. What is on their approved list are these 36-inch tall plastic white and yellow sticks, which in our experience do not go over well with anybody. They're ugly. They make the road look like a highway. And even though it's called Maricopa Highway, I don't think any of us think about it like a highway. It's just a normal, city street. So to the extent that we're able to design it and change the aesthetic and not have this highway language, that's what we're trying to do here. So we're waiting for their final approval. They've given us every reason to believe that these are going to be okay. They're very durable and sturdy. They're heavy. And when you all come out for the installation, when you pick one of these guys up, it's like a substantial piece of plastic. It's a heavy duty device, and they're bolted into the ground. They're not glued to the ground. So I think they're a much better choice for this project than the 3-foot tall plastic sticks. They're just going to make the road look like a highway.
And I'll also mention Caltrans has been great in working with us to get these things approved. And in regards to the planters, at first we were kind of it was recommended to us that we use kind of the like water barrels that are traffic control devices and put plants in them, which was definitely a creative solution. But we've managed to get them to consider these planters, which we're pretty excited about. So, all right, moving on. Okay, so the first block here, on every block and on every page, we are either going to call out just something about the design to note, or a mitigation tactic, which is something that we have thought of. And like Tony said, it's an area of the design that is more flexible in case we are noticing anything like traffic backups, and we'll call those out as well. And I think we've also called out 1 or 2 deviations from the 60% plans as well. So, I mean, basically what we've noticed, or what we've noted on this page, this is, like I said, the planters there. So the planters are going to be, I don't know, can everybody see? Well, I guess it's hard for everyone to, Tony, can you see my cursor?
Yeah, I can see the cursor.
Okay. So here are the planters that are going to be in the on-street parking lane. And so those are going to be spaced 40 feet edge to edge. So one average parking space is 20 feet long. So the idea is that in between each of these planters, there would be approximately 2 parking spaces. We're going to be using the existing dotted line, or dashed line, excuse me, between the travel lanes and solidifying that. So it'll be a solid white line separating the travel lane and the parking lane to make it very clear. And then so between the parking lane and the bike lane, again, you see the buffer there. And within that buffer, or right on the line between the parking lane and the buffer, is where the delineators are going. So if you look down at this section here, this is kind of what it would look like if you were looking at it from the side. The planters are in the parking lanes, and you might see a car parked behind one of them. And then we have the low profile delineators here. And then this segment here, I should have put dimensions on these, but this is what I was talking about. The curb to the outer line of the bike lane here is going to be, you know, a minimum of, if not about 11 feet along the corridor for emergency vehicles.
And I'll add, the delineators, you can see them in the plan as little dots. Hover over one of them, Dana, if you can, one of the delineators in the plan. So I know it's hard to see this at that level of detail. If you really want to dive into the notes and all the details here, the plans are posted on the website. And as we do new plans and have them go through the Caltrans process, we will update the website. But at the very least, you can see where we're headed, and what's being shown here is reflected on those plans. And another note, if you're going to go and do that, and just as you're looking at these drawings, everything that is in red, shown in red on the plans, is an existing pavement marking that we have to remove for the demonstration project. To the extent that we're able to, we're going to use the striping that is on the ground right now, so that we don't have to mess with the existing striping all that much. It gets confusing, and it's not that great for demonstration projects. But there are locations like the dash lines that you see on either side of the road here, and other minor locations where we have to remove some of the existing striping so that it does not conflict with our designs. That's what that red means.
Dana, can I mention something too?
Yeah.
Sure.
I just want to mention that 40 foot between the planters, that's longitudinal driving down the road. And the reason that it was going to be 20 foot between them just for individual car space parking, not that we really have parking on this highway. A little bit, I think we all know, around Ojai Meadows, and then around bigger events at the school, some people park out in the street instead of the parking lot. And but there was a special supplemental traffic study done on how would the emergency evacuations be handled if there was another Thomas Fire type event. So the consultant recommended widening the gap between the planters to 40 foot. That way, if there was an accident in the main lane, the fire trucks could either, they could just traverse into the bike lane and use that as a detour at any point, was number one. And then also, if there was a fire and people wanted to park out there, the fire trucks even could park between the planters as well. So that was an accommodation to make sure if there's another emergency like the Thomas Fire, there's plenty of options in there.
Cool.
Cool. Thank you, Greg.
I'm just going to try something. really fast because, so Tony, you're not able to see the chat?
No, I don't see anything in the
Oh,
chat.
okay. Yes, okay. Sorry, Greg. Okay, I'm able to see it. The Instagram account name, it'll be the end, it'll be on the end slide. So I'll make sure to linger on that end one so that you all can see it. Okay. So this is still block 1. So this is still Cuyama Church. This is just that middle section by the Meadows Preserve. So per Caltrans request, so first off, we had to close the left turn lanes, not at driveways, and limit or prohibit U-turns because there would not be enough room for a car to make a U-turn along the corridor.
Without making it a 2-point turn or
right.
You know.
So because we close the left turn lanes, because there isn't anything to turn into, so people would either be making a U-turn or I guess because you can also park for the Meadows Preserve obviously on the other side now with the on-street parking. They wanted us to close the gap, but they did want us to leave to not have any parking in this middle gap because, in case people need to park on the other side and walk across to get to the meadow. So that's why there's kind of a lot of really bright yellow striping there, but we need to make it very clear that that's not drive space. And then also because we removed the parking and planters in this central section, what is good is that, these manholes here and the manholes throughout the project will be able to be accessed without closing the street. Because like we mentioned, there is enough space to occupy the bike lane and the buffer, and the delineators are low profile. So water trucks, maintenance trucks, etc., for the 2 water districts should be able to access the manholes fine. So, and they have also been in our technical advisory committee as well.
And that's specific to the south side of the street, because the north side of the street, we still have to, if they want to service that manhole, you can see it's in the travel lane. Cars would use the bike lane and the buffer as the temporary traffic control, which is how it's designed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then the final segment of this first block here. So something to note, the city has been considering a ramp or an access point to the school parking lot that would be, I believe, about, right about here. So that would allow anyone biking using the bike path who wants to get to the school to kind of cut off a little bit earlier to access the parking lot instead of get into the mess of confusion of using the driveway. And so that is a project that, it's not for sure yet, but the city is going to try to advance that to be concurrent with the demonstration project, so we can have that to not just reroute bikes away from the driveway, but also just to see how that works with the demonstration project. Greg, do you have your hand raised for something on this slide? I
should put my hand down, but I guess, the quick input on that is that, we're working with the school district, and they've essentially indicated that if the extra driveway would be placed there, it may trigger ADA improvements requirements throughout their parking lot, which are very expensive. So they have not been that supportive. The improvements being done at Church Road are significant. You can see those up there. There is a narrow throat to the approach. It's more like 27 feet wide, and then the driveway opens up to 30. So part of that permanent project widens that driveway cut and provides delineators out there to assure the right lane turn coming from the left or the from the Miners Oak side is clearly separated from the left-hand turn from the northbound lane, making the left. And so that would help clarify the minor conflicts that can occur right there. But ideally, we totally separate it and we bring them in early, and there wouldn't be any conflict at that driveway cut. But I think people who have been around here for some time, the Nordoff High School enrollment peaks back in the late 90s. They had nearly double what they have now. So nowadays, the traffic still has a little 10, 12-minute peak in the morning and the afternoon when it starts and finishes, but it's nothing like it used to be. And the parking lot's only half full, whereas it used to be full, and all that kind of thing. So we're still trying to make sure we address it. We don't want it having congestions, you know, coming from the right on the screen, which would be heading northbound on Maricopa. If a timid driver gets stuck in that left turn lane, doesn't feel comfortable turning the parking lot, they could stack it up and block that lane. And we've got several measures underway to try to assure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so and speaking of backup, so one of the things that we've considered here is this yellow box, which is a mitigation tactic. So this is kind of, you know, the backup plan if we are observing congestion as cars are queuing in the right turn lane to turn into the school. And so the option there would always be to just push back this buffer and basically, you know, maybe remove some of the on-street parking here and push back so that the actual right turn pocket is longer to make more room for queuing cars. So that is, you know, one of those things that we're going to be flagging and looking at, and we'll be ready kind of with that backup. And I will mention that this right turn lane is already longer than what has been in previous permanent plans. So we've already kind of thought about that and tried to make it as long as we can. But we'll definitely be considering that. And I did just get a comment, I don't know, I think we could address it now, that someone said that the U-turn at the preserve is typically used by school drop-off people to avoid the left turn at church, which could just mean more stacking at church. So just something to consider.
And just throw in additionally, yeah, we're working with the school even back at Pirie. They would like to introduce a left-hand turn northbound at Pirie, much like the one we're looking at here at church. So you can turn left back there. They would like to see that, as well as there's a parking lot on the very far east side of the school. It's a longer, narrower parking lot that a lot of the staff parks at. So we're looking at removing the median out sort of over by the hospital over there, where it'd be a painted median. They could turn left directly into that parking lot as well as left into Pirie. Those are a couple of things that would relieve the pressure up here on church.
Dana, who asked that question?
That was Russell.
Russell, can you, Dana, go back to that slide where we show the median? Russell, can you tell us more about what you mean there? Does that mean, are you saying that people drop off their kids at this location and then make a U-turn to not have to even go to be in front of the high school?
No, what happens is that when the left turn at church gets stacked up, can you hear me?
Yeah.
People will bypass the left turn at church. They'll come down to this location, make a U-turn, and either enter campus through the right turn or drop their students off at the curb past church.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge number, but it does happen in those peak hours. So.
Okay.
So you're saying that increased backup would happen at the left turn at church?
Yeah, because they wouldn't be able to make this U-turn.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good segue.
About it. Honestly, Friends was pretty clear that they did not want people making a U-turn there, but we will bring that up to them.
Yeah, even though there would technically be room if we didn't include, I don't know, it might just be too risky though to have people U-turning because they could turn into the bike lane.
Yeah. Okay, but that's good. Thank you, Russell. That's
well, yeah, so that kind of brings us to this next block here. So between Church and Pirie, so a couple other things to note here. We mentioned the elephant tracks. So these markings here are meant to help guide people making a left turn. You know, because we've heard anecdotally that part of the reason for kind of the backup here at this left turn is because people making left turns and right turns, they make them a little bit more slowly because they're kind of worried about, you know, conflicts with each other. So these are to help guide people making a left. And then we've also added additional striping here to really clarify and delineate the two turning movements. So to separate the right and the left turns. So we're hoping that will make cars, you know, obviously not speed up into the driveway, but make their turns more confidently and things might go a little bit more efficiently. Greg had mentioned the potential widening of the driveway aprons, just to give a little bit more room and relieve some pressure at this driveway. And then this is sort of in relation to what Russell was saying. This is another mitigation tactic that we've thought of, that if there is too much backup at this left turn lane, not having planters here could mean that cars could conceivably use the parking, a little bit of the parking lane there, to go around cars that are backing up into the travel lane. So if that is the case, if we are observing that backup, it would just be as simple as removing those planters to allow for that parking to be used, which was, I actually believe, a good idea that Russell had also mentioned. Okay, so moving on, Pirie to Vallerio. So this block just gets a little bit different. So you might notice here that there's a two-way segment. And so this is to facilitate safer access to the school from neighborhoods down here to the south. So, so this is to eliminate anybody on bike trying to get to the school having to cross the street, use the bike lane, and then make a left into the school. So instead, they can use the two-way facility here to make a left to enter the school. So that's why that is there. And then also, there are no planters on this side, you might notice. There's no on-street parking either, but we only have the low-profile delineators to make sure that there's no difficulty for, emergency vehicles to enter the hospital here in case of any traffic backup. We tried to.
Dana,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you glossed over the Numina devices. The one at Church Street, where you see a purple, circle with a number in it, that's where we're installing the Numina devices, the data collection devices. The one at Church Street is being installed by the school, and it's going to pick up all the turning movements at that intersection. And then the other ones are going to be installed by the city, and those materials should arrive by the end of June. The devices to be installed.
Mm-hmm. And Russell asked another question about just how might we better facilitate bikes turning left, entering the two-way lane, and then making a left again to cross over. So basically just, I guess, making the left turns when entering the two-way a little bit safer.
Well, okay, so this is such an outlier of a situation. Somebody coming on Vallerio is going to make a left onto the bike lane in the conflict zone. So we've marked all the conflict zones with that green striping. And so given the level of bicycle traffic here, I think it's going to be fine for them to make a left here, and making a left turn into the parking lot. You'll notice when you zoom in at the Pirie Rd driveway that there is a right turn arrow for bicyclists to go parallel with the crosswalk. At that location, they could also make a left turn into the driveway. So the expectation is that they clear the driveway and then make that left turn.
I'll actually, Russell, do you just want to ask your question so I make sure that I understood that correctly?
Sure, yeah. Greg is saying that they're talking about adding left turn lanes at Pirie and into the staff parking lot. And as you can see on this, it would mean left turn lanes across two-way bicycle lanes. Left turn lanes across two-way bicycle lanes makes it very dangerous for bicycles because the left turn people do not expect the people going in the opposite direction to be there. So it basically destroys the safety of the two-way bicycle lane to add left turn lanes to it. So I'm wondering what ideas they have. The staff parking lot is down where the bike lane and the yield to peds would be.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, there's nothing here about how they would enter campus, and where the bike lane sign is again in the center below the road is the best place for pedestrians, yeah, right there, is the best place for pedestrians and bicycles to enter campus. Will there be a way for them to do that?
It's a good question. You know, we'll take a look at it. I think our expectation is that if somebody's coming in off of that two-way facility and they want to access the driveway, that they're just going to go in at the curb cut. I don't know that there's anything extra that needs to be done for them to enter the parking lot and enter campus at that location. In terms of pedestrians, that's a different story. And then also the left turn pocket into the high school parking lot at Pirie, that's not something that we've anticipated as part of this design. And in many ways, we've inherited the two-way facility on the south side of the street. It makes a lot of sense from the point of view of not making people go across the street for a half a block to only come across the street again. But there is that conflict that you mentioned.
Yeah, so that two-way bike lane was, the idea was to get the bicycles off that onto campus before they interact with the cars that are coming out of Pirie. Mm-hmm. So, you know, there needs to be an entryway onto campus through the grass area that you can see there. Yeah. That would allow the bicycles to get on campus safely before they have to interact with traffic streaming through campus.
Mm-hmm. But either way, it would be awkward if we just ended the two-way facility prematurely before a natural stopping point like an intersection. So
yeah, I agree. And the two-way facility, when there's no load in, will allow people to get into the short-off parking lot so they can get to Miners Oaks safely. But the students need a place to get off the highway during the load in, so they don't have to drive across coming out of Pirie.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Well, maybe we can design maybe we can make it clear that at that driveway, that's an entry point with pavement marking or some other conflict zone marking at the driveway. Is that what you're suggesting, Russell?
Can you guys hear the people that are watching? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, because I've been waving my hand for a long time. Can I say something?
Wait 1 second. I just wanted to get from Russell. I wanted to clarify. Is that what you were talking about, Russell? Having something that denotes that's a location?
Yeah, and one of the concerns at the staff entry there with the bike lane thing is the pedestrians and the bicyclists are going to commingle if they try to enter off that driveway. So it creates a hazard between the bicyclists and the pedestrians. So having a separate ramp for bicyclists to get across there, separate from where the pedestrians are walking, would provide safety for both of them.
Okay. I think that's something to consider for the longer term plan. We're not envisioning adding any ramps as part of this project. I'm sure you already knew that. But we'll think about how to incorporate that into the evaluation plan so that it's considered for the longer term project.
As a quick intersection, I think somebody is creating a lot of noise, and I don't know if the administrator, Dana, can mute people or not, or if everybody can mute unless you're talking. It always helps on these conference team calls.
Yeah, I think Sousa has some background noise, but I think let her.
Whoever's got the dog barking had a lot of background.
Go for it, Sousa. Go for it.
Okay, so I spent a couple of hours on the campus on Friday. There's absolutely no reason why kids have to interact with that parking lot. There's a way to coming from Ojai to turn left way before the parking lot. There's already a road there. All that's really needed is some signage, maybe some landscaping, but there's no need, from my perspective, for the kids to go into the parking lot. And the same for Miners Oaks, they can access near the football field. I thought that was the plan. If something has changed, I misunderstood. But I think this is a critical point, and maybe we can work on it with Greg if it's not part of the demonstration project. But I see no reason for kids, unless they're coming from, the only reason would be if they're coming from Church Road in the middle. But otherwise, they can completely avoid the parking lot as far as I can see.
Right.
May I?
Right. So,
yeah.
Go ahead, Russell.
Yeah. the idea that Susan has a great idea. The only problem is that it means the kids are going across the preserve or using private roadways to access campus.
No, I'm not talking
If you're gonna enter behind the athletic field,
behind. I'm talking about past the football field. There's a way without going on the Meadows Preserve property.
Yeah, we talked about that. Souza, that driveway.
That's one of the things that has not been planned. We do not have safe entries to the campus planned by either the school or the city, and it's one of the problems that needs to be handled, and it hasn't been handled yet.
I agree. We need to sort that out.
Okay, guys. I think those are good comments, and we can talk more about that offline. The one driveway, the one ramp that's by the football field, we're aware of that, and love for that to be timed with the project, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But on the other side, that's a conversation that I think we need to still hash out. But in the interest of time, let's keep it moving. We know that we want to talk to you more about that, and we can do that offline.
Okay. Cool. I think just to let you know, Reno, I just muted you. I think we had a little bit of background noise coming from you, but if you want to make a comment or anything, feel free to just send it in the chat. Okay, so let's move on here. So block 4. So here, not too much to note in terms of any, standouts from the rest of the design. We are transitioning back to a one-way facility here. And then into these driveways, we have slightly tightened up the curb radii. So most of them at the intersections, the curb radii are here. You can see, R25, etc. So most of them are pretty standard at the intersections. But these are just a little bit more tightened up just to ensure that the turn movements into those driveways are slow and that people aren't tearing into those driveways. So that's what we have called out on that section. And then the final block here, so we have a mitigation tactic again. So similar to the other mitigation tactics that have to do with potential backups as a result of turns. If the right turn into Vons for any reason becomes backed up, we will be able to push back the bike lane buffer, similar to the right turn at Church, and make a right turn pocket here for people to queue and enter into the Vons parking lot. So that's another one of those kind of backup plans of the design that we are going to be ready to implement if observed. And then just something to note, so like Tony said, the red here, just as a reminder, is existing striping that we're gonna have to remove before we implement the demonstration project striping. In the 60%, in the 30% plans, for sure, and I think 60% plans, there are really wide buffers. So the width of this buffer here continues in the 60% plans, but we have shrunk that buffer down. And I believe the goal of doing that was to make sure that there weren't backups for this right turn going on to Ojai. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Tony or Greg.
That's right. That's right. And also, yeah, the 60% plans do not have the separated bike lane on the street. It's assumed to be taken off street, as this is the start of the Ojai Valley Trail, where we take the protected bike lane through to the intersection and assume that folks would mount at the curb ramp at Ojai Avenue onto the trail there.
And I'd like to quickly chime in on that. Yeah, that's not demonstrated here, but yes, on the south side against that big Vons parking lot, the permanent design, I think you're basically indicating that just to the right of the gold box would be a permanent separated, really a class 1 becomes what they call a separated bike lane. We'll go behind the trolley stop, hugging the shrub there, and past the far right trolley stop also, and then it would connect to the Ojai Valley Bike Trail to the south. And then even on the north side of the roadway here, where that bike lane ahead sign is shown, through that, it's called the Weinberg Memorial Garden. There'll be a separate bike trail hugging the back of that. And I think Russell Sidney knows about this. This was kind of the ideal goal of bike advocates, to try to get away from that dangerous intersection. So it's kind of a great way to people coming from downtown to hug that and go into the back there.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Cool. So I will go ahead and move on here. Okay, so again, in terms of evaluation, so like we said, car, truck, bicycle, and pedestrian counts will be collected. We're also going to be monitoring car travel speeds. Plenty of opportunities for public feedback as well. So those are kind of those moments where, you know, if you fill out the survey, or if you stop by City Hall and you say, you know, every morning there's been terrible backup at the right turn at church, you know, that's stuff that we will need to know. You know, you guys and the rest of the public being the eyes on the ground, as well as the city monitoring, obviously. Intersection turning movements are going to be recorded. So again, the Numina sensors are video. That's how the collection is, or that's how the data is collected, as well as the pedestrian behavior at intersections. We're also going to be paying attention to potential cut-through traffic on adjacent streets. That was something that was mentioned at the last CAC meeting, and just something that we're going to want to flag as just another potential impact of the demonstration. And then, like Tony mentioned, the current plan is for, you know, the city to very frequently monitor the project for at least the first 2 weeks, and then they might taper off a little bit, but definitely, you know, weekly to every other week. There's going to be monitoring of the project. So that's for anything for repairs, if there are damaged delineators, or again, if there are just some of these backups that happen that we'll need to implement a mitigation tactic. So next steps, we are submitting the Caltrans permit this week. That is our goal. And, you know, after which there might be a couple weeks of processing their comments. But we, you know, are getting extremely, extremely close. The drawings that are in this presentation are the most updated. We do have the next Community Advisory Committee meeting. This will be the 4th out of 5, Wednesday, June 17th. And that information is on the project webpage, as well as the link to register, just like you did for this one. We need to set the date for implementation of the project by June 15th. That's the goal. So that will be after we process the Caltrans comments and we get a better idea of just exactly when we can implement this project. The public Q&A session number 3 will be Wednesday, July 1st. This is the final public Q&A. The focus there will probably be on implementation and just kind of setting people's expectations and informing people of what it's all going to look like when it starts going. And again, that is also available on the project webpage. And then the 5th Community Advisory Committee. Typically, this is just to set up, you know, volunteers and match them with tasks, or even just to go a little bit more in detail into the implementation with the CAC and anyone who has any questions. And so then finally, as always, you guys can email us. I'll leave this last slide up for a bit. For any of the remaining public engagements, you can go to the project webpage and see the events, although I will probably be sending reminder emails. And then we do have the pre-implementation survey, which would be awesome if you guys could take it and pass it along. That's the link there. You do just type in, you start with bit.ly, just for clarity. It's just a way to shorten the URL so that we don't, you know, so that it's easier for people to remember and type in. And then somebody had asked about the Instagram earlier. It is right here at go_ohio. And then this is the project webpage as well. So I'll leave this here for anyone who hasn't recorded any information. And we did get a question about whether or not these slides would be available to us or to people on this presentation. And yes, just like we've been doing for the other CAC meetings, We're going to be posting the video recording to the webpage, and we will also be updating the site plans on the webpage, you know, once we get a little bit more clarity on their approval. So,
And the
yeah.
slides too, right, Dana? We've been posting the slides on the website.
Yeah, we can post the slides as well.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
But yeah, so that's all we have. Does anybody have any other questions? Let me get, I can't get to my chat. What does it do?
I have a question.
Sure.
How long, if you have enough volunteers, how long does it take to finish, to do the demonstration project, the physical part?
That's a really good question. So you're already thinking ahead, Susan. I love it. For a project this size, it could take a week or more, really, like, you know, almost a week and a half. But we are going to be working with contractors to do major elements like the striping. We're not going to have any volunteers operating a striping machine. And there are going to be elements that we need volunteer help with. But for this project in particular, because we're working on a state highway and with Caltrans requirements, it's going to be a lot of moving things around and logistics. It's going to be less about painting and, you know, to the extent, Susan, if you want to be there drilling holes into the ground, we've got to drill like 1,500 holes for those, for the delineators and the planters. And that's going to take a lot of time. So we just as well hire somebody to do that rather than have volunteers.
Yes,
I don't know if Ed and Art are still on the call.
You're
They
answering.
might have left already, but
I was wondering if this is all volunteer or
Yes.
what? Yeah.
yeah. Well, you know, think about things like, you know, moving the materials around on the site. It's a 1 mile long length of corridor, and it's very long. So one of the things that we'll have people do is, you know, take these 10 delineators and go put them at the corner of Church so that the contractors can then do their install. Or we'll say, Sousa, you look after this particular element and stick with the contractor to make sure that they're going in accordance with the project plans. We're going to do that too, and maybe we'll team somebody of the project team with a volunteer, depending on how many volunteers we have. But those are the decisions we're making right now. And in the next meeting, in our next CAC meeting, that's the level of detail we're going to start diving into. How many days it's going to take. I think today we got a quote, or yesterday we talked to one of the contractors about striping. That was going to take a day and a half just for the striping, which is actually very fast. So we were thinking, do we take the diagonal buffer lines and maybe let the volunteers do that portion or not? Is it worth it? I think at this point, we're worried about the number of volunteers we'll have because of COVID and just physical distancing, but we could have more of that conversation on the 17th at our next CAC meeting.
I think also, so I saw that Cody raised his hand, and I'll call on him in a second, but also to add, you know, volunteers, the project there's going to be a lot happening. And so people are going to have questions, you know, walking by, biking by, driving by. And so volunteers, you know, as long as, like Tony said, I guess, you know, COVID restrictions pending, volunteers can really help us, you know, pass out flyers, engage people, inform people of what's going on. Because if we're going to be running around kind of managing all of the different elements, that's something that I think volunteers will really help us out with a lot. Cody, did you have a question?
Yes, for the tools. I know you guys you guys are looking for tools. Do we bring them, or does somebody come and pick them up? Because I saw that you have to put your address on the form for the last.
I think our expectation is that you bring them. If you tell, I mean, depending on what it is, but if it's something that's on that list that that is something that if you're not going to come to volunteer, then you don't have to volunteer materials. That's really, if you're going to come and volunteer with us, then bring your materials with you. I think that's
I'm planning to volunteer, but I can't drive and stuff. I'll probably take the bus if there's something. So I just can't bring a bunch of tools to me on the bus.
Oh no, then in that case we would figure it out. We would figure out some way of helping you with materials. Depending
Yeah,
on
I plan to be there and volunteer. Like I said, I don't want to carry. I can't. It's gonna look odd carrying a bunch of tools on the bus up there.
Totally. So I guess at our next CAC meeting, we can go over the resources that everybody has, and then decide, is it worth it to have you bring those? And if so, do we need those materials, A, and then B, figure out logistics of going to get you. How far are you from the site?
I'm in Oakview.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's not going to be an issue, but cool, guys. Are there any other questions? I think we've had a bunch of people drop off. I know we've gone longer than we had intended, but
there's a question about the 60% design. I don't think that hasn't been on the public website yet, correct?
Are you sure?
Right.
Or is it available?
I'd be glad to mention that one. We are preparing a report for council, and we plan to bring it to them next Tuesday, a week from, I guess that's yesterday. So we're planning to review the project, the funding, the 60% initial design. It's in process with Caltrans, and that's not a quick process, but so that's we're in the middle of that right now.
Okay, got it. And Cody has his hand up again.
No, I think that's left over from back last time.
Yeah, I think that I didn't put my hand up. I only did it once.
Okay.
Got it.
Cool.
Okay.
Well,
Cool. Yeah. So we're gonna get working on getting the video and the slides up. It might, I don't think it'll happen tomorrow, but ASAP. So anyone else who couldn't join can see them, and so you guys can review. In case you forgot anything, but thank you very much for your participation. Great.
Hey, can I just say thank you real quick and sorry for the distraction? This is Reno.
Hi, Rena.
Hey, Souza. I just really want to express my gratitude. I'm so excited about this project and really, really appreciate everyone's hard work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being on the call. And we're grateful to everybody for taking time out of their day to do this and attend a meeting like this. I know it can be inconvenient at times, but we really appreciate it. So
just so you know, Tony, Reno is right around the corner on Ojai Avenue. He owns Boku Foods, and he's been a long-time resident here. So he's nearby, and I think interested in the project, so we appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we'll get to see you in person and meet you next month when we go do the install.
Yeah, for sure. I love the spirit of, the volunteers, and, if there's anything I can do to help out, 1,500 holes sounds like a lot, but, I'm happy to pitch in and help.
Well, I also need, actually, water for volunteers.
Yes, we need snacks.
Great idea. Water and superfoods. Maybe we can help out there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, perfect. Count us in.
I also want to say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The other thing, Grant, that I'm going to be asking for during the council meeting is benches. The only bench on that whole stretch is at the trolley stop, and it's going to be hot. And if I want to be out there answering people's questions, and we're going to need a place.
You mean just for the demonstration or permanently?
Both. We need benches for the demonstration, but also permanently. If we're going to have elderly people walking in the heat from Miners Oaks to Bonds along this nicely landscaped, pedestrian-friendly street, we have to have benches. I mean, that's not too much to ask, and I'm going to insist on it.
I hear you, Susan. That's a good plan. The only big part of discussion on Tuesday is the only thing we're lacking is money. So if anybody wants to donate a bench, we lost all of our donators, but anybody wants to come in, we'll be glad to put it up.
I might have to provide the benches.
If you want to provide them, we'll put them in, absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
That's a thought.
Cody, what was your comment?
I was going to say, if you guys need me to go knock on the doors and stuff, see if we can get volunteers, I'm more than willing to do that, or anything you guys need help with and stuff.
Okay,
Awesome.
cool. That's really helpful. All right. All right, guys, we'll talk again soon, and the 17th, that's our next call where we're going to go into the next set of details. Okay, so we'll talk again then.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.